Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Andrew DiCecco joins us on Thursdays. We look at the matchups that he is looking at in the Eagles and Titans. A lot of text messages on our college football conversation. By the way, somebody texted in and says, I need to apologize to Tua. See, this is where I will agree. I had said I thought Tua would be a bust, and mainly because I thought he'd get hurt because he was too small. And by the way, he has been hurt. But that being said, see, this is a good sign to that text message guy. When I'm wrong, I'll say that I'm wrong. I'll admit. Tua has exceeded my expectations as a player, even though my reason I thought he would be a bust would be his injury issues, and he has been hurt. But that being said, when he has played, he has far exceeded my expectations. So to that text message guy, see, I will apologize to Tua.
Look at that.
So that shows you how many times you're wrong when you text me, because I will apologize when I'm wrong, and I never apologize to that guy because he is wrong all the time.
There you go. So technically you're still right. And
see what I mean?
And it's really –
you know you're wrong if I don't apologize. If you tell me I need to apologize and I agree with you, that shows you how many times you're wrong.
And it's really, if we want to bash Tua, I mean –
I'm not bashing Tua.
I
thought he would get hurt a lot, and he has been hurt a lot. But
hurt.
even though he has been hurt a lot when he has played – I like that Dolphins team. I think I had a number 3 in my Fine 5 yesterday. I like them that much. Let's see what Andrew DiCecco has to say about this one. I don't know. Where were you on Tua? You're a big draft guy. Did you think that Tua would be a transformational? I don't want to say transformational is not fair, but
he's in the MVP race.
Were you a Tua fan coming out?
First of all, look at that growth from you, Mike, admitting you're wrong, man. I'm proud of you. But, yeah, I did like Tua coming out of the draft. I'm one to say that I actually had him as my top-rated quarterback coming out, and it wasn't looking too good early on. I admit that, but it's nice to see that that faith that I had in him paying dividends here. I really liked his accuracy. Knew he didn't have a big arm, but I thought that he had enough intangibles to lead a team, and now you're starting to see what he's able to do as he's putting everything together. Need to have a lot of pieces around him, granted, but you're starting to see him flourish now.
All right, 13 weeks in, Andrew, who is your MVP? Is it clear-cut? Is it a close race? Is there an obvious choice here? What do you say?
Well, I think it's still Patrick Mahomes based on everything that he's done, his body of work. But I think that it's either going to come down to Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. I think one gets MVP. The other is a candidate for Offensive Player of the Year.
Huh. Yeah, makes sense. Now, when you look at Mahomes – Gil and I talked and debated this a little bit in the first hour, Andrew. The team factor, right? There's other context clues, I guess I can call them, that impact these conversations and just the reality of who ends up winning these awards. We can even tie in Coach of the Year. A little bit different, but still same ballpark. How much of that is a factor? Like, do you buy into if you plug and play quarterback X, the Eagles are still 10-1?
I think you have to, Ryan. I mean, you have to weigh that in. When you take Jalen Hurts off the Eagles aren't 10-1. I mean, he is the equalizer with his legs and his passing ability. He really has come to his own here as a starter, and he has full command of the offense. The coaches have a lot of trust in him to execute. He has a lot more flexibility at the line of scrimmage, and he has the command of the locker room. So I think when you look at just the complete 180 and how much he is the factor on that offense, and really you saw him take shape last week against the Packers, running for 157 yards. You just see he called himself a triple threat, in arm, passing, and with his mind. You're really starting to see that take shape. So I think that there is some merit to that, and I think he is going to be one of the top 2 candidates this year for MVP.
Andrew DiCecco, give him a follow at DiCecco NFL, writer for InsideTheBirds.com. Does an excellent job as always. Let's talk about the story that you put out there on InsideTheBirds.com. I know we have questions for the Tennessee matchup. Obviously, we'll get to those in a second. But one of just the cooler stories of the matchup against Green Bay was Reed, you sunk my Blankenship, comes in with that huge stumbling pick on the Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. Talk about what you wrote there and what you found.
Yeah, well, Reed Blankenship was a player that really emerged in the preseason, very short tackler. I remember vividly him making a tackle on Salvin Ahmad, the running back for the Dolphins, stopping him in his tracks. And that's really what his game is, Ryan. He's not going to be a traditional coverage safety. When he played at Middle Tennessee State, he was a 5-year starter, set the school record in tackles with 419. He's a box safety, and that's primarily what he did there, and he's very physical. He sets the tone in that regard. But he has room for opportunity as far as coverage, and you saw the good and the bad, I would say, with Blankenship when he was pressed into a more substantial role on Sunday night. But I thought that he did a great job on the interception in anticipating, reading Rodgers' eyes, breaking on the ball in front of Tyler Davis, the tight end, and coming up with the football. And then you saw some of the bad, which was his first play coming in. He took Darius Slay's guy in the short crosser, which was Christian Watson, I believe, and it left single coverage Josiah Scott on Randall Cobb, which was the touchdown there. And I thought he took a poor angle on Christian Watson on that big play, but that was Marcus Epps' guy in the slot. But, he made some really sound tackles in the running game, and I had a chance to talk to him after the game. And one of the things that he was quick to point out was how instrumental Marcus Epps has been in his development and calming him down when he was thrust into that sizable role and helping him, play to his skill set and calm down and hone in on his fundamentals. So I think there's a lot to like with Reed Blankenship, but I also think that we're going to have to be patient, and there are going to be growing pains. But I think that when you look at what the Tennessee Titans present in a smash mouth style of football, that really translates to Blankenship's game. I think that he's more of that box safety that's going to affect the line of scrimmage and set the tone as a hitter.
Right, and you wonder how much that will affect this week's game, because as we all know, Andrew, everybody's talking about, Tennessee likes to run, and how do you see that matchup? Can the Eagles hold up against the Tennessee rushing attack, or is that going to be the problem that everybody thinks it will be?
Well, it's really interesting because Derrick Henry averages 22.5 yards, attempts per game, and 95.3 yards per game. But that said, the Cincinnati Bengals held him to 39 rushing yards last week, and all that had to do with spacing and low possession. But the Cincinnati Bengals have a really formidable defensive front, just like the Eagles do. And I don't know that right now the Tennessee Titans have enough on the offensive line to withstand what the Eagles are going to be able to provide from a pressure standpoint and from just a size standpoint. I think their left tackle, Dennis Daly, has really struggled. Their left guard, Aaron Brewer, has really struggled. They've been without their center, Ben Jones, for a couple of weeks with a concussion. They should get him back this week. He's been a full participant. But it seemed to really trickle down once he was out of the lineup. It's sort of the line started to fold. But I think having him in there will help out. But I think the Eagles have too much on the defensive line, especially potentially getting Jordan Davis back. I think that they're going to really be able to stop and plug the holes there in the running game, which is really going to make Tennessee which could make Tennessee one-dimensional, and they don't have much there from an aerial attack standpoint.
Yeah, I was going to say, everybody talks about their run game, but what do they look like when they throw the ball? Is there something that, the last couple of, especially when Willis was playing, they didn't throw the ball at all. But obviously with Tannehill back, that changes a little bit. We're starting to see Treylon Burks added to this offensive bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Treylon Burks, Mike, but their passing game by and large has been pretty anemic. Robert Woods at 56 targets leads that group. He only has 350 yards receiving through the season, believe it or not, when you look at what the Eagles have in A.J. Brown leading the team. Treylon Burks, the first-round pick from Arkansas, he's really emerged as of late. He has 181 yards on 11 catches through the past 2 weeks. And they also have tight end Austin Hooper, who is a short to intermediate guy. But he's only averaging 23.5 yards per game, so he's not really been a factor either. So they don't have a whole lot of threatening passing options. I think if you stop Treylon Burks, you really make their passing game null and void, and I think that's going to be the key there. They don't have a whole lot there, so I think that the key is going to be Derrick Henry, and I think they're going to keep running the ball and hope that one eventually breaks or that he wears down the defense, because obviously 22.5 yards, 22.5 attempts per game tells you that they're going to keep going until something breaks.
Andrew, I think one thing that we look at when we're trying to find a matchup that we like here, right, is, hey, the Eagles struggle against the run. But when we flip the script here, where does Tennessee struggle that Philadelphia can exploit? Because everybody's talking about the Eagles' problems against the run, and it feels like no one has brought up what Philadelphia should be able to do when they play Tennessee.
Well, their run defense is legit. They allow just 84.5 yards per game, 930 on the season, but they find themselves on the opposite end of the spectrum in pass defense, and they allow 266 yards per game, which is second worst in the NFL behind Minnesota. So I think that there's going to be areas of opportunity there to really let loose. I think this is obviously a big game for A.J. Brown being his former team, facing his former team. But I also think Quez Watkins could get on the board again, facing a banged-up secondary. I think that Elijah Molden has still been a limited participant with a groin injury this week. So I think that they might threaten the slot position in the middle of the field. They don't, obviously we've outlined, and I've talked about this with Ryan, that they don't have the weaponry as far as tight ends go to really exploit that. But I think Quez Watkins has been the beneficiary of the absence of Dallas Goedert, and I think that he could have a big game this week. He's had 2 touchdowns in as many weeks, so you could see that again this week.
Eagles have had a lot of success on the ground themselves. They don't have a Derrick Henry. Miles Sanders got the rock 21 times, 143 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. We know what Jalen Hurts did on the ground as well against Green Bay. What's the game plan here? I know you just sort of outlined what this offense looks like and where they can exploit the Tennessee Titans defensively, but how much of an emphasis and priority should Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen make the ground attack for the Eagles on offense, Andrew?
Well, that's a great question, and I think that even that despite Tennessee's penchant for stopping the run and bottling up bottling up that area, I still think the Eagles need to rely on that to make it a balanced attack. I mean, when you look at what the Eagles were able to accomplish last week, Ryan, Hurts and Sanders combined for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns on 38 carries. I mean, I think that they need to at least try and roll that out again this week until Tennessee proves they can stop it. But the passing game is going to be there. You know that that's going to be there. But I think to have a balanced attack there, you want to see if you can get Miles Sanders rolling again. I don't know that I would want Jalen Hurts. You don't want to have your quarterback exposing to all these different hits that he's been taking over the past several weeks. So I would think you would want to roll out Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, who saw an elevated role last week. Get these guys going and try and wear down that defense, see what you have. I mean, Tennessee is really strong up front. Jeffrey Simmons, DiCecco Autry, who, by the way, is he's out of practice this week. We'll see if he is able to suit up. He leads the team in sacks and in quarterback hits with 16. So we'll see what he's able to do there. But they are really strong up front, but I still think the Eagles need to try their hand and see if they're able to, if their offensive line is able to beat their defensive front.
The Dallas Cowboys play the Colts this week, and for the Eagles with Tennessee, not only is this an important matchup for the Eagles just to keep their distance for the division and for the NFC, this is an important matchup, I think, just for their locker room and for the fan base. Not that the team cares about that too much, but a lot of us have circled this game, Andrew, as, well, that's Derrick Henry, and matchup-wise, it's a nightmare for the Eagles. So based on all of those factors, like how big of a game is this against Tennessee for the Birds?
Yeah, this is a game that I consider a measuring stick game, right? You have Tennessee's a smash-mouth football team. They're physical, they're fast, and they play grimy. So you want to see how the Eagles are able to do in sort of a slugfest type of atmosphere and game script. And if they're able to do that, I think it's going to answer a lot of questions. I mean, this is a 7-4 football team. They're coming off a 4-point loss last week, but Tennessee's a quality opponent, and much has been made about who the Eagles played, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if the Eagles are able to hold their own and bottle up with the best running back in football, or one of the best running backs in football, and prove that area is no longer a weakness, that's going to check off a lot of boxes and answer a lot of questions moving forward. So I don't think this game can be understated in its importance, Ryan. I think that it really is going to go a long way in telling where this team is at this point in the season.
Well, what I want to ask you then is, when this game's that important and push comes to shove, you got A.J. Brown against his former team. And I know he said, hey, it's kind of a love-hate thing. They might love me, they might hate me. But if you're the Eagles and you want to try to put a game plan together, is A.J. Brown the guy that you're building that game plan around this week? Or do you say, man, we just ran for 300-plus yards. Let's see if we can keep that train rolling. Which way is the best way, in your mind, to game plan this week?
Well, I think when you look at where the Titans are most vulnerable, Mike, it's in the secondary. And knowing that you have one of the most prominent receivers in the NFL in A.J. Brown, the magnitude of what this game is going to mean for him, get him going. I mean, he had a fumble last week. He owned it. He played through a lot last week. So I think that you might see them trying to get him the ball early and get him rolling. You know, not that he needs much confidence moving forward, but I think that would go a long way in helping him get over the past couple of weeks in which he's fumbled. But I also do think, as I alluded to earlier, that they really do need to have a balanced approach here because Tennessee is a physical football team and they swarm to the football, and you don't want to make it too one-dimensional. You want to be able to execute at all facets moving forward. You don't want to show your hand or have any tendencies.
I know, Andrew, you take a look at the big matchups here, and obviously that run defense is going to be challenged here in this one. But ultimately, Tennessee is interesting because they play a lot, as you kind of said, grimy. I like that word. You give them a grimy game. When they played that game against Kansas City, I thought that game was interesting. It was like 2017, back and forth. Do you feel this game is similar, where it's a kind of a low-scoring, kind of bare-knuckle fight like they had against Indianapolis? Is that the style of game you anticipate?
That's exactly right. I see this as an old-school South Philly slugfest, and I think it's going to take everyone, and it sounds cliche, but it's going to take everyone. It's going to take all three facets, including special teams, to be able to pull this off. And I think you could see it go into the fourth quarter because I think that you're going to see Tennessee really control or look to control the clock there with the running game. And the Eagles as well. I think it's just going to be a low-scoring affair, maybe a 16-13 type of effort.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, check out his piece over at InsideTheBirds.com. Of course, Football at 4 every week right here with the matchups that he's watching in the game. And, of course, you can listen to the Eagles and Titans right here on Sunday, 1 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Andrew, we'll catch up with you next week, bud.
Sounds good, guys. Talk soon.